Once upon a time, there was a village on top of a hill. And that village had lots of children. And the children would go and play in the snow. Because sometimes it would snow there, and the children liked the snow that fell on the ground, so they would build stuff out of it. One time they built a snowman named Frosty, and they put him together from the snow they found on the ground. And when they put him together, he came to life. And they're all like, "Oh wow, a live snowman! That's so cool!" And the snowman's like, "Oh yes, I'm Frosty the Snowman, I'm so cool!" And they start dancing, and the kids were happy, but then they weren't happy because he started eating them, and the kids were like, "Oh no, don't eat this," but he still ate them anyway. And so he got arrested and thrown into jail. And he's like, "Oh no, don't put me in jail, don't put me behind these steel bars," but they still did, and they didn't let him go. So while he was in the jail, he started writing about how he didn't think he should be in jail, and how the government was evil for putting him in the jail. And so then he got famous because people liked the stuff he had to write about, and they believed it. So he got released from jail, and he went on Saturday Night Live. He hosted it, and the musical guest was James Blunt. After SNL, he went on to campaign for president, and he became really famous, and because he was famous, he won the election and became president. And when he was president, he wasn't a good president. People were like, "What? We voted for you. We thought you were good." And he's like, "I'm not good." And he's like, "Oh no." And then they're like, "Oh, okay." And so he became bad, and he started blowing up stuff and taking over, and he like ruled the country. But it wasn't like a democracy, it was more of a dictatorship. And people were like, "No, you can't do this." So they sent the governor to stop him. And he's like, "I'll stop you." And he's like, "Oh no." And so he used a flamethrower on Frosty, and it melted him to the ground. But the thing was that Frosty could fuse himself back together from the water that was snow that was him. And he fused himself back together, and he ate the governor. And so people couldn't figure out a way to put a stop to him. And he started taking over more than just America, but like he started taking over Canada and Mexico. And soon he started taking over the world. And people were like, "This has got to stop." So they all worked together, and they captured him, and they figured out the only way to stop him was to fly him in a plane to Middle Earth. And there they dropped him in the fires of Mordor, where he melted and burned, and they got rid of him for good, and he melted into pieces. And then everybody was happy, and it was a great Christmas, but not really, because the town and the world was still in ruins.